All right. How is everyone doing? I hope you're doing well. Very looking forward to going through a little bit of information today. I mean, when it comes to water, there's so many routes that we could take this discussion and talk a little bit, because water is something that deeply affects all of us. But for the timing, something that we can connect to, we're going to be talking about residential water, and specifically if you could live with 50 liters of water today, and some of the technologies that are coming up that we can expect to see in the future. So before we get started, or as we're starting right now, I'd love to hear where you're signing in from. And so if you feel, if there's the chat box you should see on your right side, if you want to let me know where you're based. I always love to see it and see where you're coming from. On this side, my name is Alisha, and I'm signing in from the west coast of Canada. So specifically the Okanagan Valley, and something that people don't typically realize is that, yes, Canada has a desert. It's a semi-arid desert region, and it's an extension of the Sonoran Desert that actually runs south into the States. Okanagan Valley actually has many periods of drought. On this end, I studied international business, majoring sustainability, went on to do my master's in climate change, and spent some time working and studying in Kenya, in the Netherlands, and in the US. But most recently, I founded RainStick, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about that later on in the presentation today. RainStick is a clean technology company. Our product is a recirculating shower that saves 80% energy and 80% water, but it feels like a high-pressure shower. So our mission is to drastically cut residential water usage, and this is what we're going to be talking about from more of a broader perspective today. So if you have any questions, open to a discussion. I do have this presentation, and following we can have a few minutes. I'm hoping to leave a few minutes for some questions, and we can talk a little bit about that. All right. So despite the fact that less than 1% of our world's water is available fresh water, every time we use water, we're wasting it. And I want to start our discussion today by starting in Cape Town, South Africa. I'm not sure if anyone's been there, or maybe you have family there, you're originally from South Africa. But Cape Town, South Africa was previously named the most beautiful place in the world to visit by the New York Times. But in 2018, they announced they were only 3 months away from running out of water. In order to cope, people began filling their jars, waiting in lines for hours just to fill them, and even clearing supermarkets of water. And in order to cope, the government decided to ration people to only 87 liters of water per day. And then they went down further to only 50 liters of water today. But let's just talk about 87 liters on its own to start. If we took 87 liters with the status quo residential tech, it would get you a 5-minute shower. It would allow you to wash your face twice and flush the toilet a few times. But with that 87 liters, you didn't do your laundry, you didn't brush your teeth, you didn't water your plants, you didn't wash your hands, and you didn't even take a sip of water. How do you cope with that? That was 2 years ago. And Cape Town today is still experiencing droughts and is still in this state of a water crisis. But the thing is, it's not just Cape Town, because if we look around the world, Sao Paulo, Brazil, a mega city with 20 million people, is dealing with heavy droughts. And 2 years ago, it even led to the looting of water trucks and some regional fighting in areas. Brisbane, Australia, announced they only had 6 months of water left. In Syria, so if anyone's been listening to CBC, if you're based in Canada, they just announced a couple days ago that the refugee camps in Syria right now are rationed to 20 liters of water per family per day. If we look globally, less than 5% of countries have more water than they did 20 years ago. But by 2050, our water demand is projected to grow by 30%. The thing is, we're living in a world where we need to reduce our water consumption. I think many of us know that, and we need to come up with strategies, allowing us to go from 300 liters per day, which is generally the average, all the way down to 50. In our research with RainStick, we've now interviewed over 500 people who have validated they do want to live a sustainable lifestyle. But the key thing to think about is that people don't want compromise. And up until this point, much of residential innovation has relied on compromise. And I do not think this is the solution. It's not, it can't be. Personally, the major opportunities for technology are coming from efficiency and reuse. And if we try to solve this water problem with the exact same framework that we've always used, we're going to get the same results, and we're not going to be able to hit those objectives that we need to with the growing competition of water in the world. But the key thing is that there's some really exciting things that are happening in the world. More innovative solutions that are starting to come down the pipeline, and partners who are challenging this notion of water technology. And they're presenting different opportunities to change it. And that's what I'm going to spend some time talking about today. As a general rule, I think the world needs to do one thing a lot better. All technology, solutions, and habits should be based on data. What I mean is people need to know how much water there is. Because water comes out of the tap, people often think that it's going to be available forever. And until it actually stops flowing, people might say, you know, it's okay, that there's not really an issue, unless it actually affects them. But maybe then the solution is to dig some more reservoirs or to find water in other sources and pipe it in. But then we're just transferring the problem to someone else. Right here in Canada, for anyone that's based in Canada, there's never actually been a water study at a national level. And a study completed by WWF in 2017 stated experts in Canada know water quality and quantity is deteriorating, but they just don't know how much at what pace. Canadians were astounded last year, 2019, when Canadian water quality made headlines, because a study of 12,000 tests over the course of 4 years found that high levels of lead in cities like Moose Jaw, Saskatoon, and even Montreal. Some were even similar to the neighbors in the States in Flint, Michigan. The thing is, we need to know the facts. And a way to deal with water quality and quantity is this idea of digital water. So telling people how much water they actually have left. And this is something that Brisbane, Australia did quite well. They adopted it during their water crisis. They posted how much water is left on digital boards. And they also told people, and constantly would bring it up, you can see it on the screen, 100 liters per person per day. So they would constantly tell people what their quota, where they need to be. They didn't plead, they didn't yell. They just told people how much water there is. And they let people take that responsibility. And as a result, it created this sense of urgency. And people began conserving at home, looking into rainwater holding tanks, even flow limiters with their showers, with the government supplied. The thing is, we need to understand where water starts, where that problem starts, how much effort that droplet is, and get creative with multi-use solutions. And we talked a little bit about how much in that data. The next takeaway is that connectivity and that multi-use of water. Historically, we've only really looked at the water that we can see. So we've looked at, the lakes or the rivers, the freshwater, surface water. But we need to go a little bit deeper beyond that surface to look creative and to look at multi-use solutions. And one example I really like is Singapore. So for anyone that, you might know Singapore, it's on an island. For anyone that hasn't, it is on an island, and there's limited fresh water supply. And so water scarcity is a very big issue. It's incredibly energy intensive to desalinate water and often very expensive. And so coming up with different innovative solutions in order to be able to solve some of their challenges. So you know what they did? They created Asia's largest stormwater collection site. So how does it work? Think about like a massive rainwater holding tank. When it rains, water seeps through that permeable surface, if you can see my screen, and it's collected in a reservoir for future use. And you wouldn't know this because looking at it, it's a beautiful lifestyle attraction. There's an art exhibition. They've hosted concerts here. They even use it as an exercise facility. So they're getting creative with some of the ways that they're using and thinking about things. And although this is a big example, and we're going to be talking about just the residential and some different technological solutions, it's something to think about from a larger perspective, ways that we need to think about water. Because when we look at the way that we use residential water in a home, I think most of us do know that we use too much. All right, it's not a secret. But yet the solutions today, for example, with showering, has been simply just to use less. The Harvard sustainability report came out and they said the solution to showering and the water that we use, just use less of it. Say the ABCs 5 times in a row when you're in a shower, and then on the 6th time, jump out of the shower. Or listen to a song, or turn off the shower as you're putting your shampoo in your hair, and then quickly, put it back on. But the thing is, if people have to compromise, and there's those barriers, things that people have to remove, and it's so easy to get to the tap, for adoption, that's going to be very challenging. I mean, we also see low flow options. Shampoos barely washed out of people's hair. With toilets, low flow options, you might have to flush that toilet, 2 or 3 times to get the same thing that you want. And I mean, we've all been there. It's sometimes not pretty. And so you want a different solution that might challenge that. And so just for fun, we're looking at doing it different. I mean, because we look at smart thermostats in the world, electric vehicles, there's other industries that are doing this really well. They're coming up with innovative solutions that don't force people to compromise. And did you know that we use the same exact technology that we used in the 20th century? So the first shower in the 20th century, 1810, was created. It's exactly the same. The only thing that's different is the flow restriction. So we need to look more. We need to look at the way that we're perceiving, and we need to truly innovate in the residential space. So for fun, does anyone want to take a guess at the percentage? Maybe think about it on your own, how you think you would answer that. What percentage of residential water goes to a few of the things? So the main areas are showering, toilet flushing, laundry loads, and faucets. That's generally the breakdown of water use in the home. There's a few other areas, but that's kind of the general. So think about that a little bit. Maybe just take a second or two to think how you would answer that. If you want, feel free to put it in the chat without Googling it, because information is so easy these days. All right, so the actual percentage, is showering is roughly a quarter of residential water use. Toilet use is roughly a quarter as well. Clothes washing, it's almost 20%. There's a few others, ad hoc, but leaks is something that's a big thing. And then faucet use, so every time we open up those taps. So there's a lot of ways that we can start with this. How do we reconstruct the way that water is used? Well, I want to start with the toilet. Does anyone know roughly how many liters are flushed down? So every time you flush a toilet, think about that. Maybe you know. Again, if you know, feel free to put it in the chat box. The answer is today, with today's toilets, it's about 6 liters per flush. All right. So you know how much water you're supposed to drink per day? It's a couple thousand liters. So basically, it's a lot of water that's flushed down the toilet every single time someone flushes. And I think, why is that? It's incredibly wasteful. And why do we use water at all with that? And Bill Gates, he actually thought about the same thing. He thought there must be another way for flushing. So we decided to run a global world challenge where he had teams from all over the world compete to create the most innovative solution and the innovative toilet with the intention of making it use no or very little water. But essentially something that can be scaled to developing world as well as right here in North America and other locations, in Europe, etc. Because he understood water and sanitation is crucial for people. Water and sanitation, it's a human right, but yet often it can be very difficult to access it. So we said, okay, we're going to create a world challenge. We're going to get a whole bunch of people together, and they're going to innovate the toilet. And there was a lot of really wacky solutions. One of them that was my favorite was the tiger toilet. And essentially using tiny tiger worms that were contained in a box below the toilet, they would actually feast on feces. And it sounds crazy, but the activity, it leaves behind a mixture of water, carbon dioxide, and a small amount of this wormy compost. But it's incredibly nutrient rich, and it can be used for crops. So they've removed water completely, and they've just used some biodegradable ways and avenues in order to be able to hit that. Other ideas that were in the challenge, well, incinerating human waste into biocharcoal, and additionally looking at below the surface of water and PV powered systems, so looking at solar. So these are some ways that they've said, okay, let's challenge this. And this is something that we're going to see more and more. In the future, I think water in the toilets is going to be something of the past. And we have conversations with the future generations. They're going to laugh at us, but they're also going to be extremely disgusted with the way that we wasted water. When we look at clothes washing, does anyone want to guess how much water is used for clothes washing per load? If you want to think about that, maybe you think it's, it could vary. There are more energy efficient appliances using a little bit less water as well, but typically it's about 60 liters. All right, so that's a lot of water that's used per load. And if you're separating your darks from your lights, from your colors, it really does add up. And so there is a company in Sweden, they said, not today, no more. We need to do something about it. And so they did away with the conventional idea that our laundry water needs to go right down the drain. And instead of the drain, they actually have a holding tank, as you can see on the side. And so in between different loads, this water goes into this holding tank, and a good amount of it is actually saved. And so it doesn't go right down the drain. Instead, they filter out some of the water, so some of the contaminants, the soaps, and then for the next load, someone can reuse it. So it's reusing the water from the source, cutting down water from 60 all the way down to 12 liters per load. And when we look at showering, it's really no different. Every time we shower, we heat up anywhere from 70 to 100 liters of fresh water, and then it hits someone's skin for only a second before it goes down the drain. Showering alone is very wasteful, along with the other areas. 150 trillion liters of water is wasted every year, but it's also very expensive, and it makes up a good portion of someone's water and energy bill. And similar to the toilet progression, how there's been some low flow as time's gone on, it's been very similar with the shower flow history. 1975, it was about 5 gallons per minute, down to we're now looking at about 2 gallons per minute. State of California just mandated 1.8 gallons per minute. And in a very short way, very simple way of saying it, it's causing compromise. And so people are starting to really, they want to live a sustainable lifestyle, as mentioned, but it's really starting to get to them. And so in an area and in a world where water scarcity is an issue, the company that we started is RainStick, and we're specifically targeting showering at the beginning and talking about ways that we can reduce that, because our goal is residential water savings. We need to keep that. We need to, save those CO2 emissions and divert them, because we're just using too much. And that's why we came up with RainStick. So RainStick is a recirculating shower that saves 80% energy and 80% water, but it feels like a high pressure shower. There's a filtration component, so it removes bacteria and viruses. And that high pressure experience, that's taking people back to 1985, because it's recirculating, you can increase the flow rate. There's also an IoT component, so people can track their data. They know how much water they've used in the shower. And as a result, it saves someone $500 to $700 per year, because all of a sudden, if you're using less, then you're saving a lot more. And we can look at that from the whole holistic point. If you're no longer using water with your toilet, you're no longer using as much water in your laundry machine, and with your shower, it really adds up. Someone might buy an electric vehicle, a Tesla, for example, for over $50,000, but with that Tesla, they might save $1,200 per year. But with buying 2 RainSticks, for example, if someone's really purely about the economic benefit, then they would save a good amount of money, the same amount that you would save with an electric vehicle as well. The time is now for households in North America to think differently. If we look at North America, there's 300 million households, all right? So that's a lot. And if we changed up the toilets, the showers, the laundry, the clothes washing, we would cut residential CO2 emissions in half, which is huge. And then there's also would be more money in the hands of individual households, which is really important. We see a world where we go from linear to circular, where people make smart decisions and it's based on data. And we can live with 50 liters per day, because if we think about the different aspects and the different technology, waterless toilets, that's taking a drastic amount away. Showering, you're going down from 70 to 100 liters all the way down to 8 or 9 liters. Laundry, going from 60 liters down to about 12 liters. It's possible, and it's totally doable if we think innovatively, and if we thrive. We live an irresistible lifestyle. This is the future, and this is what we're working on with RainStick. We're excited about what we're doing, and wanted to spend that time just to talk a little bit about some of the innovation, because it's happening. And if you're interested in learning on and staying part of that journey, absolutely feel free to reach out. There's some exciting things that are happening. We're actually going through our website relaunch next week, and so there's some really exciting things happening. But I'm going to go back to the main chat here, because I want to see a little bit. Perfect here. So I'm looking at some of the questions here. In urban centers, how can we already build condominiums and apartment buildings to integrate these systems? Would it take a whole system overload, or is it easy to integrate? Very good question. So I think one of the best ways to deploy some of these solutions is looking at urban pilots and looking at different solutions that are within that space, because there's larger density. Start there, test it, see how it does. It really depends on the actual solution that is there. Talking to some of these residential solutions like showering, that's something that I know very well. There is retrofit options. And so there's retrofit as well as new build. And I think that with the future, with everything that's happening in our world today, we need to look at solutions that are going to be retrofittable so that people can change some of those solutions over. So the short answer is these solutions are not ones that are for only certain jurisdictions. These are ones that are starting to start to unravel pretty quickly. And speaking specifically to the toilet, Bill Gates actually had a conversation, and he said, we need to get this down so it's more accessible for more people. It needs to be easy to install. And so that's actually what they're working on right now. But in short, we need solutions that are going to be retrofittable, and that's very much what these solutions are working towards. The next question I have on my screen is, have we been in discussion with any major builders to use RainStick in new builds? And if so, which companies? So in short, RainStick, we're very much in some of the last phases of validation and testing. We're very excited about some of the conversations that we're having. Some of the conversations are I'm always wondering if I'm allowed to share some of this information. A large group that is, they're actually challenged in living a 50-liter home challenge. And so it lines very directly with what we're working towards. We are in some conversations, specifically those that are interested in homes that are manufactured homes, for example. More sustainable, looking at the interiors, the way that they're built, some of those. And if anyone's interested, we can have a side conversation. Feel free. I'm always very interested to speak to folks and talk a little bit more about that. What was the biggest challenge in developing RainStick? There's so many, there's always so many challenges, you know, as an entrepreneur, and, you know, to anyone that's out there that might be interested in entrepreneurism and they're trying to figure out what that step is for them, I would say jump in with both feet. It can be so scary at times, and you don't know all of the solutions. And I think that's the biggest thing, is you're basically treading this journey where you don't really know what's about to happen, but you're giving it all. And I think the challenges for us, for any founder, I would say, is always that funding, making sure that you have the sustainability to keep going. But I would say with us also is it's a new technology. And so sometimes new technology takes a lot of education to make sure that people are comfortable with it, particularly in this space in Canada, with this idea of recirculation. It's a new thing. You know, it's happening in other places, but we don't see a lot of recirculation of water. And so it's a new thing. And so that's something that we're in the kind of the process of making sure that people are comfortable with that. How complex is the installation of RainStick? It's a straightforward installation. So it doesn't, the actual shower doesn't come in a whole bunch of different parts. It comes as a full out system. And so it's very straightforward, and someone could install RainStick in a weekend. Great. Any other questions? I think we are just in the process of wrapping up this session. To everyone that's listening, thank you very much for staying tuned. I think, you know, it's people like you that are starting to continually change things. Thank you for being part of Campus Party. Thank you to the organizers and everyone that's put it together. This is fantastic. I'm very excited about the next generation and everything that we're doing. So feel free to reach out to me on my LinkedIn, Alisha McFetridge. You can Google me, or my email is alisha@thereinstickshower.com. Our website is relaunching next week. Let us know what you think. We're always excited. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of the show.